So CBDCs are government's answer to cryptocurrency. As governments have watched cryptocurrencies gain in popularity and adoption, they have felt that cryptocurrencies threaten the government monopoly on the issuance of money. Now, government monopolies on money are actually fairly recent thing historically. For most of human history, money has been largely a bottom-up phenomenon. So, human societies valued some commodity, whether, it was shells or obsidian chips or, gold or silver. And then that commodity became standardized into more fungible tokens that could then be exchanged. Sometime, several thousand years ago, as the first large states started to form, governments began to realize that in order to maintain the armies that they would need to consolidate and expand their power, they were going to have to pay soldiers in a currency that could be easily spent wherever the state decided to wage war. And so the first forms of state-issued coinage began to appear, sort of in coincidence with the expansion of human empires. But that didn't get rid of other forms of non-state money, which sort of coexisted alongside these state-issued currencies. The vast majority of people didn't have actually access to state-issued money. There wasn't a lot of liquidity in those days, and so people had to measure transactions in other ways, primarily using ledgers, rather than even commodity exchanges. And so, the question of what is money is one that Bitcoin has raised. And in the 20th century, that we can sort of consider that century the peak of state monopoly on money issuance and also on planning of the monetary economy. So the central banking system really, it emerged in isolated examples in previous centuries, but it really became a global phenomenon in the 20th century. And, the United States Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. And that, has become sort of the central bank of not the whole world, but for many countries around the world, the central bank of central banks. And so, when Bitcoin was introduced, it was introduced as a direct challenge to the central bank monopoly over money. And central banks, unsurprisingly, didn't like that. And so it's taken them a few years, but they've now produced their answer to Bitcoin in central bank digital currencies. And their pitch to the people is that Bitcoin is too volatile to serve as a store of value or medium of exchange, in other words, to be an effective money. But hey, you trust your dollars. So this is just a digital version of the dollars that you already use every day. So much better than Bitcoin, right? Well, the problem with it is that it partakes of all of the weaknesses of a central bank issued digital currency or a central bank issued currency. So, anyone who's been following the history of the US dollar is aware that it has been progressively devalued since its introduction. Today, I think it's lost, 97, 98% of the value that it originally had in 1913. This devaluation, though, has happened slowly enough that a lot of people don't notice it. And so they consider it to be a stable store of value. It's not. And so, that's one weakness of CBDCs, is that it simply replicates the inflationary central bank currencies that are already problematic for that reason. But then it also adds on to that weakness the full programmability of the currency itself. So a CBDC is money as software, software directly controlled by the government, meaning that the government can program each individual unit of the currency to only be spendable under the conditions that it decides. And so at that point, you have money transforming from a neutral arbiter of value into something like a, company store token that can only be spent, under the conditions that the company decides. Well, it's not really money at that point anymore. And so that's what's so interesting, is that it's actually Bitcoin that is preserving money as a thing, as an object, as a tool that is available to humanity, while these CBDCs are becoming fully politicized tokens that are used to exchange under politically favorable conditions.